There was a time when Ubisoft was on top of the world, and financially, I'm sure in a way they still are. But at that time, they were delivering banger after banger with games like the Splinter Cell franchise. Pretty much every Tom Clancy game, in one way or another, was at the very least fun. Most of them were not live service games, and they were still making games like Rayman, and of course as well Assassin's Creed. And I would argue actually that Assassin's Creed, especially in like the writing and the soul department, which it's hard to quantify, but you know what I mean, like the heart of really trying hard on those products, for the most part it was actually better back then too. It's not even just nostalgia. You look at the games they release now, they're kind of all catered towards dragging out the Assassin's Creed franchise in many ways, and even though I've still enjoyed a lot of them, there's very few that feel like they have a really strong purpose. A game like Assassin's Creed Mirage, for me, kind of called back to that time of Ubisoft. But Ubisoft itself does not really seem to care about their own history. They don't really seem to care about that glory time, or those glory days when they were on top of the world, because what they care about is selling you something now. Ubisoft's CEO, and I always am not able to pronounce his name, so I would love to hear your pronunciation of it. Yves Guillemot is how I always pronounce it. Has pretty much just straight up come out and confirmed that Ubisoft as a company hates the idea of video game preservation, and they don't even beat around the bush. You know, I will give them this. At the very least, they are transparent. They are very transparent in this to pretty much say, you do not own your games, piss off, stop bothering us. And this is all around the Stop Killing Games movement, because I talked about this before, it's something very important, I believe, in the European Union and in the UK, because if it goes through and has an impact on such a huge market, they'd borderline have to sabotage their games, all these companies, in other markets out of spite in order to not implement those changes across the board. It would basically be more work, because they would be kind of pushed to preserve games in that market. So anyway, I have a whole video on that, and there's several videos breaking that down. But Guillemot actually answered some questions about this, basically saying that Ubisoft is providing a service, you don't own things, they know of the petition, and more, and we're going to take a look at that today. But I do have a question of the day for you, which is, if you could bring back one Ubisoft game from the past that is now dead, what would it be? You know, I think that it's funny that bots, just AI bots, could solve a lot of these problems. I think of things like the Mercs versus Spies. I believe that was the name of the mode for classic Splinter Cell. I think of things as well like the Assassin's Creed multiplayers. It's funny to me that no one is demanding that they perpetually support things. This petition literally just is asking that they support it to the best of their ability, and that they essentially go on for the lifespan of the game to make it so that players can at the very least continue to play the game instead of the games just going away. So basically, Guillemot responds to this, saying that they're aware of it at Ubisoft's annual shareholders meeting, and when asked about that regarding the crew, saying, regarding the petition, we operate in a market, and whenever we release a game, we provide a lot of support for that game. We also provide a lot of services to make sure that the game is accessible and remains playable 24/7. Which this one's funny to me because I was just the other day playing Assassin's Creed the Ezio trilogy, been doing a Let's Play of these games on my other channel, Degenerate Plays, my podcast-style channel, link is below if you're interested, with a friend of mine, and we are still encountering game-breaking bugs in Assassin's Creed Revelations on this version, where like smoke bombs can crash the whole game, achievements don't even unlock, sometimes progression is stalled. And you have Guillemot here saying, oh, that we make sure games are accessible, and we supported them, and we provided a service. Dude, this is Assassin's Creed. This is your bread and butter, and even those games have problems. He went on to state that players and buyers are forewarned. I like how it's almost like God causing one of the plagues, you know, the trials in Egypt where it's like, well, we gave them a warning ahead of time in the Old Testament. It's very ominous. You're forewarned when a Ubisoft game will shut down. And regarding the Crew, went on to also say, oh, but we gave them the option to put Crew 2 on sale for €1 just before they shut down the Crew 1, saying for just €1, they got to buy the next version. €1. It's not a lot of money to be able to continue playing a game. And on PC Gamer, where I was actually looking at this news popping up, the article author even points out, which I will include the article in the description down below, even points out that calling the Crew 2 both a sequel and continuation of the original game service is very questionable because they're supposed to be two separate games. So that's just a very odd point to make as well. But Guillemot went on to say, all video game publishers are faced with the issue of changing or ending services. You provide a service. How many times can this guy say service, by the way, in this quote? But nothing is written in stone, and at some point the service may be discontinued. Nothing is eternal, and we are doing our best to make sure that things go well for all players and buyers, because obviously support for all games cannot last forever. And the article author here on PC Gamer even went on to point out that Stop Killing Games does not demand unceasing support for games by its publishers. In the website FAQ, it states that it's in favor of publishers ending support for a game when they choose, and that what they're asking for is that they implement an end-of-life plan to modify or patch the game so it can run on customer systems with no further support from the company being necessary. A good example of this is actually Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I can't believe I'm saying it's a good example of something positive, but it is. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, should it have come out already with an offline mode? Yes. So I'm basically giving someone a pat on the back for a non-victory lap on a game that was not very good. But in general, they did implement in a offline mode where you could actually play through the entirety of the service-based game so that it wouldn't just die in the future. Now, I know a lot of Batman Arkham fans probably sighed. It's like the one game that they wish did not get preserved. But when it comes to game preservation, I think it's important for pretty much everything. It's the preservation of these artistic creations where even when they're bad, I still don't think that they should just be obliterated off the face of the earth. You should have an option as a player if you want to engage with that piece of media. Same way, if a movie stinks or a book isn't very good or it's contentious, we don't just say, well, that book sucked, we'll burn them all. We say, okay, well, that book's not for me. I thought it sucked. I'm not going to read it again. But we're not going to advocate against the idea of Josh over there. I don't know, I'm just making names up, just random people, right? We don't advocate against them going to read the book. We don't say, hey, David, I hated that book. You are no longer allowed to read it. We're deleting all copies. They're all off digital storefronts. I'm going to need to ask you to burn that. And what's interesting with this is Ubisoft recently had a whole thing with their terms of service leak where it was basically demanding, or people looked through them, I should say, because no one looks through these, and it was widely reported, that it was basically demanding that when a game is shut down or recalled, that you destroy physical copies of it. This is how they feel about game preservation. This is how they feel about what you own. You don't own it to them. You can buy a disc. They don't even care that you own the disc portion. They still want you to destroy it when the game goes away. And like I said before, it's funny because all of this, or almost all of this, was even solved by a company as greedy as EA back in the early 2000s when they were making James Bond games, and they included offline bots. So if you didn't have someone over, you weren't playing with somebody, you could still play the game offline. And then you jump ahead to, I guess I should say you could play it with other people because the internet was not a huge thing for console games at the time anyway. GameCube era, PS2 era. It existed, but it wasn't huge. But even with something like jumping ahead 5 years, 7 years to the Activision era of James Bond games, you now have games that had multiplayer that have no bots. So because there's no service anymore, it's parts of the game that are not even playable by the player. But a game from years earlier had solved that. Same type of game, a shooter, regarding the same character, regarding the same type of modes with like team deathmatch and stuff like that, just running around shooting your friends. That game was better preserved in versions from the early 2000s than it was from like the mid 2000s on the Xbox 360 generation, that series. That's what's so frustrating, is game developers actually used to try to do this, and game publishers used to allocate funds to do this because they were proud of what they made. It wasn't just some stupid service to them, as Guillemot keeps pointing out over and over and over and over and over, using the word service. Ubisoft does not care about their games on a company level. Developers care about their games at Ubisoft. Artists at Ubisoft care about their games. Researchers at Ubisoft care about their games. But at the company level of executives and people calling the shots, they do not care about video game preservation, and in fact have been outright dismissive, if not borderline hateful, towards the idea. And it's very sad. Yeah, sure, nothing is eternal, but pushing things to die before they have to, and removing the ability to enjoy something that you put money into, is very bizarre. So I'm wondering what you think about all of this in the comments down below. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe. I do appreciate you very, very much for checking it out. I want to say a quick thank you to some of our channel members. If you want to support this channel, we have channel memberships here. Also, we do have other channels as well in the description down below. I do several different channels. One is based on anime and Japanese works. I have a podcast style Let's Play channel. We have a channel where we look at JRPGs and RPGs, so all kinds of fun stuff. Love to have you along for the ride. We do also have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop, where our primary mission is the preservation of things. Because guess what? There's a lot of books in this world that are destroyed and damaged. They're unable to be sold, or they had to be sold dirt cheap, sometimes even given away because they're going into a landfill. What we do with that is we take these things, we transform them into new pieces of art through a new medium, with resin into resin pieces, coasters, keychains, trays, and more. Media and art and just material preservation are very important to us. Keep these things out of landfills and then recycle the rest. Discount code DJAY123 for 10% off over there. My wife Jill does a wonderful job running that. We've gotten some orders lately. We really appreciate those of you who have. And we also make handmade resin and beaded jewelry over there too. Have a fantastic day. As always, everyone, stay shway.